Hello, everybody. This is the Old Bear from the Old Bear's Den of Bigfoot, and we're back again with video number 2 in the series of my 30 years of going out and looking for Bigfoot. And in this 5-year increment, this be my year 6 through 10, and things started getting a little interesting at this point. So I hope you like it, and let's get right into it. Turn it over to my buddy here, and he'll ask me questions, and we'll go from there.
Well, we had an exciting first 5-year interview. Now let's start your next 5 years. Going into your 10th year. What happened the next year here, your 6th year? What all did you get into? Where'd you go? People you're around, maybe,
Mm-hmm. Well, my 6th year into it, I was still floundering around on my own, and by the grace of God, I ran into an older gentleman that had been looking around for these creatures for most of his life. I guess he told me his story, and he had seen one when he was younger, and he got involved in it and was looking around, and he was showing me the ropes pretty much. He was showing me what I need to look for, the areas that he had found Bigfoot in, and showing me, the signs that they leave behind in a lot more detail, and, what some of the stuff that they do, like X's, and well, they would make a series of bows in an area, all that stuff, his thoughts on it, and it helped me form my own thoughts on them. And if I had a thought on it, I wasn't looked at like, no, you're wrong. And he taught me to take everybody's opinion into account of what these signs meant. And so I was under his wing from my 6th year all the way up through most of my 8th year into doing this. And we'd go out and do investigations. People would ask us to come out and talk to them, and we'd meet and then go to the people's house, and they would tell us their accounts of seeing Bigfoot. And we'd go back in the area and check their stories out, and did a lot of walking back then. Quite a few more nights I'd get home, my knees would be hurting at this point. We walked quite a few miles to these hills of West Virginia, and some of these hills are tough. They're straight up and down.
What all did he show you? You said he kind of like took you under his wing, teaching you and showing you things. What all did he show you?
He showed me how to pick an area and dissect that area to where Bigfoot would be. Like where we are today, there, you can dissect this area. If you look at it with the help of the internet today, you can take this area and put it on Google and go to Google Maps and pick this area right here, and you can bring it all the way down to look at it. But back then we didn't have that. He had topographical maps. He had all kinds of topographical maps of the state of West Virginia. And he could, by looking at those topographical maps, tell you where Bigfoot was going to be at any time of the day. Whether it was going to a water source close by, what time of day they would go water. He knew what he was doing. And he would show me tree bows and show me that tree bows led to a food source where they would commonly hunt or meet up to hunt. And then, it would lead to a creek and stuff like that. And tree twists were a boundary marker. And if you found a huge axe, we found quite a few of them in that 2-year period. That meant for other Bigfoot and man to stay out of that area. That the big male was dominant, and he didn't want anything in his area near his clan. And those are things that I learned through him.
Wow. How long was y'all together?
Oh, it was about 2 years and probably 3 months or 4 months.
Mhm. Wow. What all did y'all find in y'all's excursions and things? You talk about all the places you walked. What all did you find?
Well, we found a lot of footprints. Found a lot of tree bows in areas that he could look at on a map and say, yeah, this is where Bigfoot would be. And you'd go in and find, a lot of tree bows. You'd find tree breaks, tree twists. And, usually you didn't find those big X's that they make, with the tree turned upside down, stuck in the ground with the root ball still on it. You didn't find that a lot. And we would go to these people and get their accounts and go in the area where they saw it, and he could pick out by just looking at the terrain and where they were laying up. And a few times we got in too close to where they were laying up in the day, and we got growled at. And when that happened, he taught me to get out of there. You're just too close at that point. When you start smelling them and you start hearing them growl, it's time to turn around and go back the way you came. Don't run. And he taught me that lesson the hard way. I was young, full of myself a little bit. A young man gets full of himself, thinks he's the most powerful thing in the world, and I found out the hard way that these things can be aggressive towards you, and he pretty much taught me to be careful and to respect. Don't get so close, and stand back and let them do the walking out and let them show themselves. And it wasn't by chance happenings. I probably saw with him. I probably got glimpses of Bigfoot probably 20 times in that 2 year and 3 months, or 2 years and 4 month period.
Wow, sound like y'all was really doing some good investigation there.
Yeah, we were a good team, very good team together. I had the legs for it, and he had the knowledge.
Why was y'all just together for a few years there?
Well,
Tell us what all happened there.
it's still tough for me to talk about, and this has been over 20 years ago. About the end of the 8th year, of my 8th year of looking for these creatures, and after seeing the first one, he got a report from these guys, and it was up in Nicholas County, and these things had run people out of this one holler up there countless times. People would go in there and they would hear them scream at them. They would bluff charge them. In the daylight, didn't make any difference. Guys would go in with deer hunters would go in that holler because it was known for big bucks. I mean, big West Virginia deer, and they would get chased out. They'd have guns. Some of the guys would shoot at them, and they'd still chase them out. But we went in there one morning, and it was like near the end of winter. It was right before March, a couple weeks before March. It was in the middle of February. And we went in there that morning, about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we walked through and we found some footprints and found some tree bows, but we started finding X's. Little X's, big trees turned upside down, shoved in the ground, marking their territory and telling people and Bigfoot to stay out. But us people, we're not on the same. We didn't get the same notepad to tell us all the instructions. You know what I mean? And, you know, we started to find them, but they was always to our right. And we went to the head of the holler, and we come back out on the left side. And when we come back on the left side, he looked at me and said, "Hey, I gotta take a break for a few seconds, and I'm gonna step over here to these cedar trees." And there was two big cedar trees side by side, and they were right on this little rock ledge, and there was rocks strewn out through there. And he said, "Won't you go up there to those rocks on up the bank and see if you can find? It looks like something has walked up through there, and see if you can go up there and find a footprint." So I walked maybe 75 foot from him, and you know, I wasn't trying to be quiet. I was trying to let them know that we were there, you know, just in case they would come out and it wouldn't surprise them. You know, we didn't want no trouble. He didn't carry a gun. At this point, I was carrying a gun. You know, I done been growled at a couple of times, and I didn't trust him. And when I walked up the bank, I went up to them rocks and I started looking and found a footprint. And when I found the footprint, I jumped up and turned around, and I never saw him. Never heard nothing. Thought he was behind the cedars, but he always wore these real bright tan leather pants or chaps. And you could see him because they were a yellowish tan, you know, leather. And I never saw it. And I started running around through the woods looking for him and couldn't find him. And after a short amount of time, I come out of the woods and went to a phone and called and got state police in there. Two officers showed up, and they took my statement, and I took him into where he disappeared from, and they took my handgun away from me and checked to make sure that there was ammo in it and it hadn't been fired recently. I just recently cleaned it that morning before I left the house to go meet him, and the gun wasn't fired, so they knew that I hadn't shot him or anything. I hadn't shot the gun. And I took him in, showed him where it was at, and then we looked around there for a little bit for him, and we come back out. When we come back out, there was a Department of Natural Resources officer there. There was a couple more state police, and the DNR officer, you know, wanted to hear what happened, and I told him, and I said I never heard him go anywhere. I never heard him leave. You know, he would have made sound leaving, walking out of there. And the DNR officer looked at me and said, "You ain't going back in, just stay out here." And I was like, "I want to find my friend." And he said, "No, you can't go back in. It's now a crime scene. We have to go check and see if some kind of foul play has happened to him." And so I sit out there, and they had a crime scene investigator come out, and they tested my hands for for powder residue and everything else, and I didn't have nothing on my hands, and they checked the gun, and it hadn't been fired, and there was four of them that went in, and they come back out probably after about an hour or so, and looked at me and said, "You go home." So that told me they found something. I just knew it in the back of my mind, and I knew in my heart they had found something. And I asked him, I said, "Did you find my buddy?" I said, "That old man has never hurt anybody. He's never done anything to anyone. Did you find my buddy?" And they wouldn't answer me. And they made me leave. So I went to Summersville and got a motel room and stuck around and tried to go back in there the next morning before daylight, and they saw my pickup and stopped me and made me leave. They wouldn't let me go in and try to look for him. And I waited a couple of days and took a day off work and went back in there. And I got in there, and I went in there and I found his hat. And where I found his hat, probably within 100 yards of where he disappeared. and I never saw a boot mark or anything. The whole time I looked for him. But I have a very, very good suspicion based on what I did find of what took my friend. And it makes me angry to this day that they can do that without me knowing it. Now, I may have been young, but I was a pretty accomplished hunter by this point.
75 feet.
Yeah, and at that distance. Why didn't they take me? Is my question. Why didn't they come and get me? If they could walk up on him and get him out of there like that, why couldn't they come and get me? And I've asked myself that question since that time.
Where did you, was his hat, when you found his hat, was it around anything or any place that would be significant, or was it just laying on the ground in the woods?
It was laying on the ground at an entrance to a cave. And now this cave, I could have crawled in this cave and not touched the roof or the sides easily. So anything wider shoulder than me would have had no problem getting in. I mean, you could duck walk into the cave.
Be like a bear's cave. What somebody would come up and say, "Oh, well, that's big enough to be a bear's cave."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and the bear could weigh up to 500 pounds and crawl in it and not have a problem. Be 7 foot tall and no problem at all.
Do you remember, or can you recollect, did it look like the cave entrance was used, or did it?
Yes. I found footprints outside of it. Human-style footprints, and they were not little. They were in the 20-plus inch range. So what was going in there was very big.
And I don't think you crawled in there. So you don't know, you go in there 10, 15 feet, it might open up big enough, like might be a 15-foot ceiling in there.
Yeah, I didn't go into the cave very far. I got down on my knees and started crawling in, and the stench that was coming out of that cave made me sick. I got sick. It was real bad. So I backed out and went to my truck and got a rifle and took every bit of ammo that I had with me to go back in there to go in the cave and see what I could find. But when I went back in, there was a DNR officer saw me going in there, and he slammed on the brakes.
Cut you off.
Turned his sirens on and hollered at me, and he said, "What do you think you're doing?" I said, "I'm going to go in here and do some target practice." He said, "No, you're not." He said, "I know who you are and I know what you're doing. You're not going in there." He said, "I could take you to jail." So you'd have to make up a charge, and I'd beat it first time, and then I would come and have a talk with you personally about why you don't want me going in there.
Is it possible that you can disclose what county this was at?
It was in Nicholas County here in West Virginia. Right near the Nicholas
Yeah, 'cause we're not going to give
County border.
Yeah, we're not going to give exact locations.
Right.
For everybody's safety there. And now, did the family of that man ever get any information?
He only had an older brother and a younger brother, and both of his brothers had passed away by this time. The youngest brother passed like a year after I met him.
So it was easy for the state just to keep it hush-hush.
Well, yeah, and he didn't have any kids. He'd been married for 35 years, and his wife passed away. She got cancer and passed away.
Almost 20.
Okay. Well, I think it'll do good for your second 10 years. That was pretty intense, having to be involved with a friend's disappearance there. You know, being around and going through that. That would definitely keep you interested in Bigfoot. Maybe for whatever good or bad reason, but definitely keep you interested, because not all of them is friendly.
No.
There's a lot that is, but there's a lot that ain't.
Yeah.
And that is a very good story to prove that.
Well, the way I look at it is you know, I've ran onto Bigfoot that are good, you know, towards you. They don't harm you and everything. But then you go in another time and then they're aggressive towards you. Their attitudes change just like we do.
And it could be a different clan that has come through too.
Yeah.
I mean, they move with the food.
Right.
You know?
So, I guess we're going to end this second video of the second 5-year increment of my 30 years of Bigfoot. And I hope all of you get some information from this. And I hope it helps you to understand that these creatures can be very aggressive and they can harm you. And it don't take much for them to take you out. So all of you be blessed. Hope the Lord watches over. I pray the Lord watches over each and every one of you. And this will be the end of the second 5 years. Thank y'all.